Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. I've said this every day this week. I'll say it again. It was a wild ride on Wall Street yesterday as investors had desperately hoped President Donald Trump paused his tariffs against most nations, excluding China, of course, and stocks surged to one of their biggest gains since World War II. We have all the details for you. After the U.S. Supreme Court ruled earlier in the week that the Trump administration could proceed with deporting illegals using the War Times Act, a couple of federal district judges have again stepped in and stopped the deportations. We have those details as well. Thousands of illegal immigrants have started using a new government app to self-deport rather than face forced removal. And bad news for the lefty reporters. Don't email the White House if your email signature includes your preferred pronouns. If you do, you'll be ignored.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
What a difference a day can make. Investors got what they'd hoped for. A pause on tariffs, except for China, and the markets loved it. Stocks surged to one of their biggest gains since World War II. The S&P 500 soared 9.5%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average flew nearly 3,000 points higher, and the NASDAQ Composite jumped 12.2%. Didn't eliminate some of the losses, but got investors back pretty close. The market rebound started with a simple truth post from President Trump when he said, I have authorized a 90-day pause after recognizing that more than 75 countries that he had said had been negotiating on trade and had not retaliated against his latest increase in tariffs. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent later told reporters that Trump was pausing his so-called reciprocal tariffs on most of the countries and their biggest trading partners, but maintaining his 10% tariff on nearly all global imports. China was a huge exception, with tariffs going up to 125%. So how did this all happen? I mean, for the last few days, last week actually, since last Wednesday's Liberation Day, top Trump administration officials have said no pause would take place. Over and over, Trump officials said we will not be pausing. We're in this we're going to stay the course. The president himself said he's going to stay the course. Well, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, speaking with Brett Baer on Fox News yesterday, explained what the president's thought process was like arriving at the decision to take a pause.
All right, so 2 days ago, the president truthed out that he was willing to negotiate with all these different countries that were interested. And then yesterday, he said he would do it in a bespoke fashion, one by one individually. And the calls were unbelievable. And the key was, it wasn't just calls from all these countries, because over 75 called, but they started calling and making real offers. Finally really digging in and understanding how they treat the U.S. unfairly and really offering us a clear path to where we could do really good deals with these countries. And so finally, Scott and I went in and we talked to the president and say, how would you like to deal with this? We have so many countries and they all want to do it now, like now. And then we came up with the view that, look, China is going in the other direction. Let's take on China because they're going in another direction. But with all these other countries, let's give them a chance to negotiate these deals. And that's what happened today.
I guess you can look back and, again, it's just part of the negotiation process. And that's what I like about Donald Trump is if he realizes that maybe he needs to take another turn to accomplish the goal, unlike some leaders who will dig in, unlike what it appears China is doing right now, and letting pride get in the way of changing course. And President Trump is not afraid to do that. He said yesterday that he was open to providing exemptions for certain U.S. companies that have been hit especially hard by the tariffs through no fault of their own. President and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent spoke to reporters yesterday afternoon at the White House and were asked repeatedly about the effect that the tariffs move has had on financial markets and whether they'll let their recent declines affect future trade decisions. The president was meeting with NASCAR drivers at the White House when he was asked why he decided to pause the tariffs. Here's his explanation.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents. They wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop because it was not sustainable. Last year, China made $1 trillion off trade with the United States. That's not right. And now I've reversed it. It's for a short period of time, but we made $2 billion. We're making now $2 billion a day. And somebody had to do it. Roger actually said it. Charles Schwab was here a little while ago, one of the great financial people, and he said he's been waiting for 40 years for somebody to do what I did over the last month. And if you didn't do it, you wouldn't have a country. It wouldn't be sustainable. So I'm honored to have done it. And, look, nothing's over yet, but we have a tremendous amount of spirit from other countries, including China. China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. It's one of those things. They don't know how quite. They're proud people. And President Xi's a proud man. I know him very well. And they don't know quite how to go about it, but they'll figure it out. They're in the process of figuring it out, but they want to make a deal. And we have many other countries, as you know, many more than 75. And they all want to come, and they want to come here, or they'll go to Commerce, or they'll go to Treasury. We have our great senators here and congressmen. They'll call John, they'll do somebody, they'll go through somebody, but they're all calling, how do we do this? They all want to make a deal. Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate. So we'll see how it all works out. I think it's going to work out amazing. I think that our country is going to be at the end of a year or shorter, but I think we're going to have something that nobody would have dreamt possible.
And look, we're already starting to see some things that just a few days ago we didn't think was possible. All right, so what are you thinking now? This has been a roller coaster ride since last week. Are you good with the president pausing the tariffs? Send me a quick text. Email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. You can also leave me a message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Always use promo code Joey when you go to MyPillow.com, and you're going to get the very best offer that Mike Lindell has. And boy, does he have some great offers right now. The Giza Dream Sheets, normally $139.98. They're only $69.99 when you use promo code Joe, because Mike Lindell is going to give you the wholesale price since the big box stores once again canceled the spring delivery. King size only $79.99 with promo code Joey. The Percal queen size normally $89.98. Your wholesale price $29.98. King size only $34.98. So go to mypillow.com or call 800-893-4059. 800-893-4059. Have your credit card ready. Don't forget, you can also get some free shipping on some of the options as well. This is not going to last long, folks. So place your order today at mypillow.com. Use promo code Joey. President Trump at the White House yesterday was specifically asked if he would consider exempting some larger U.S. companies that have been hit especially hard. He said, I'll take a look at it as time goes by. We're going to take a look at it. There are some that have been hit hard. There are some that by the nature of the company get hit a little bit harder, and we'll take a look. Now, he was asked how would he determine which companies would be selected, which ones might be exempt. The president was non-committal, but did say that he would just do it instinctively. Trump added, you almost can take a pencil to paper. It's really more of an instinct than anything else. So basically, he's going to go by his gut feeling when the time comes. After the president's Liberation Day tariff announcements last week, we have seen a whole host of response. We've seen countries all around the world trying to get in front of the president. Of course, Monday, Prime Minister from Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, was first. The EU has been wanting to also get in front of the president, as have a lot of countries around the world. They're ready to make a deal. And it's been fun to watch, although it's been painful in a way too. But we're going to make it. And I've been telling you all along, folks, to be patient, to take a deep breath. Don't be concerned. Don't pull up your financial statements on your phone incessantly. This is all going to work out. And boy, I mean, think about if we have another day on the stock market like we did yesterday, we will have regained all of our losses, our paper losses, because they're only losses if you sell. If you just settled in, and I heard Dave Ramsey say yesterday, you got to look long-term when you're a stock investor. You can't look at this daily, long-term, and that's what we're doing. We're looking long-term. Hi, Joey Hudson here. You know, this spring there's a renewed energy and focus on efficiencies, and shaking up unhealthy habits don't serve us well. There's so much chatter about making America great again, but it starts in your home with you being the best, healthiest version of yourself. And PhD Weight Loss is doing their part, because for the first time ever, the first 11 callers get 2 free weeks added to your weight loss program. That is huge. PhD's out to prove that you don't need Big Pharma to reach your goals. It just creates dependency, not long-term change. Dr. Ashley Lucas researched weight loss trends for years and discovered a scientifically proven way to retrain your body to burn fat efficiently without hunger, extreme exercise, or dangerous medications. PhD clients watch their belly fat disappear, their energy skyrocket, cholesterol and blood pressure normalize without starving themselves. I lost over 30 pounds and I've never felt better. So call now and mention promo code Joey for my 2 weeks for free with my program. Call 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. Thousands of illegal immigrants have started using a new government app to self-deport rather than face forced removal. According to data from the Department of Homeland Security, more than 5,000 people have voluntarily left the country through the CBP Home app since March the 10th. Now, think about this for a minute. Think about the reverse here. Joe Biden's administration had a CBP app that allowed people to come into the country, to literally reserve an appointment to get in. Donald Trump's app allows you to get out. This all ties into the major push by the Trump administration to get undocumented immigrants to leave the U.S. on their own so that we don't have to give them a free ride back. The administration recently released a flyer warning that anyone ignoring a final deportation order could be fined nearly $1,000 a day. The flyer's message: self-deportation is safe. Leave on your own terms by picking your departure flight. President Trump has been vocal about it as well. He released a video urging people to self-deport. In it, he says that leaving voluntarily is the safest option and might help people eventually return legally.
People in our country illegally can self-deport the easy way, or they can get deported the hard way, and that's not pleasant. The Biden administration exploited the CBP One app to allow more than 1 million aliens to illegally enter the United States. Now my administration is launching the CBP Home app to give people in our country illegally an easy way to leave now and self-deport voluntarily. If they do, they could potentially have the opportunity to return legally at some point in the future. But if they do not avail themselves of this opportunity, then they will be found, they will be deported, and they will never be admitted again to the United States. Ever again. You're never coming in.
A message from President Donald Trump. You know, I don't know what the thing was with the music in the background, but that was, everywhere I looked, that was the official video from the president. The app, of course, is part of a broader strategy to shift enforcement. Instead of relying entirely on raids and detention, the administration is offering basically a carrot and stick approach. Leave now, keep your earnings, maybe even get financial help with the flight out, or stay and face steep daily fines and to be exported maybe on terms that you don't like. Critics of past administrations say that this approach is working simply because the government is actually enforcing immigration laws for once. James Rogers from the America First Legal said, even just a credible threat of enforcement can be enough to get many illegal immigrants to comply. And I think that has a lot to do with it. I think that's why a lot of people are no longer even attempting to come into the country, come across the southern border, because they know that Donald Trump is serious about closing the border and not letting illegals come in. I think just the mere fact that that message got out early on is helping considerably keep those numbers, keep them down. They're at record low numbers now. The CBP Home app also promises some benefits for those who take the self-deportation route, like protecting their ability to apply for legal immigration down the road. While the Trump administration makes it clear that deportation is a top priority, officials say this new voluntary option helps both sides. It reduces the strain on law enforcement, of course, gives migrants a chance to leave without the chaos of getting arrested and potentially staying in detention. And speaking of detention, the Trump administration is seeking up to $45 billion over the next 2 years to massively scale up the U.S. Immigration Detention Center. They're going to make room for people who are here illegally and who are rounded up. This move could reshape immigration enforcement nationwide. The Department of Homeland Security's Immigration and Customs Enforcement posted a request for proposals last week. They're inviting contractors to supply detention facilities, transport services, guards, and medical support on a scale that we have never seen before. While ICE doesn't currently have this type of funding available, the proposal positions the agency to be ready to quickly expand if the budget requests are approved. The $45 billion figure represents more than a six-fold increase over the agency's current $3.4 billion detention budget. It aligns with the broader GOP-backed immigration funding plan that could allocate $175 billion over a 10-year period of time for enforcement. Trump is serious about this, and talk about maybe discouraging people from coming over here. When people start seeing that we're building massive detention centers for people in our country illegally, I don't think they're going to want to visit one of those. That in itself may be a deterrent of having people trying to sneak into our country. ICE's population already exceeds capacity with 47,900 people currently in custody. This was as of the end of March. Their budget is only for 41,500, so they have more than they technically are able to serve right now. A recent emergency appropriation added $500 million to ICE's $10 billion budget. That fell short $2 billion that the agency had sought to maintain current operations. They're flooded. They're overflowing. And I got a feeling that Congress is going to allocate this money, because if we're serious about this, if we're serious about deporting millions and millions of people, we got to have a process. We got to have a support system. And that means as ICE is out there gathering these people, they have to have a place that they can put them until we can get them back to their country. And I think we're going to see, hey, look, you may want to invest in private prison companies now. That may be a good investment, because a lot of these prison companies, these private prison companies that sort of became a thing some years ago, a lot of states contract rather than operating their own prisons. This is going to be probably a booming industry. So if you're in that business, or maybe you should get into that business. It's going to be interesting though, because again, we've got to have a system in place. So far, Tom Homan and his crew has been working on what Joe Biden handed over to them, which was not sufficient because Joe Biden did not want to detain people. But Tom Homan does. Tom Homan is taking it very seriously that Donald Trump wants people rounded up and shown the door. And Tom Homan, he wants to please the president for sure. Your comments are welcome. Send me a quick email, joey@joeyhudson.com. Text me. Leave me a message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. This is a good time to be an attorney representing either the Trump administration or the many organizations who are constantly suing the Trump administration. The courts are staying pretty busy with the Trump administration continuing to be challenged almost daily. The latest is good news, and Trump has had a great week so far with the courts. Yesterday, Chief Justice John Roberts stepped in to temporarily block the return of 2 fired federal board members, giving President Trump another short-term win as his administration keeps clashing with the courts over how far executive power can go. I mean, he's being tested every step of the way. This latest one, the brief order from Justice Roberts, puts the brakes on a lower court ruling that had reinstated Gwen Wilcox from the National Labor Relations Board and Kathy Harris from the Merit Systems Protection Board. Both were Democrat appointees who were removed earlier this year by the Trump administration and had challenged their termination as unlawful. And this is a problem because we're seeing a lot of this. Now, one would think that it's just common sense that if Joe Biden appointed you to a position, we now have a new president, that you're going to lose your job. But they want to fight this. They want to challenge Trump. Earlier this week, the D.C. Court of Appeals voted 7-4 to put Wilcox and Harris back in their jobs, back in their roles, citing longstanding Supreme Court precedent, including the 1935 Humphreys Executor versus the U.S. case that protects certain agency officials from being fired by the president without cause. The appeals court judges made it clear that only the Supreme Court had the authority to overturn that kind of precedent, not the lower courts. Trump's team immediately appealed, of course, and Chief Justice Roberts responded by issuing a temporary stay, hitting the pause on the reinstatement while the Supreme Court can decide whether to take the case and give a permanent decision. Now, this legal back and forth is part of a bigger fight over executive power, and that's what this is all about. To a degree, it's about Donald Trump. These people hate Donald Trump. But to a larger degree, it is challenging executive power and the limits of presidential power. Trump's administration has pushed hard to expand the president's authority to remove independent officials, something that has led to multiple court showdowns. It would be scary to know how much money and how much time has been spent in court since January the 20th. In fact, the Justice Department recently told Senator Dick Durbin in a letter that it intends to urge the Supreme Court to overturn Humphrey's executor, which has been a case used as precedent for many, many years, calling it outdated and a barrier to holding executive officers accountable. Federal judges who previously had blocked firings were openly critical of Trump's approach. Judge Beryl Howell wrote that portraying the presidency as a king or dictator fundamentally misunderstood the Constitution. Now, these judges like to throw these buzzwords out there, king, dictator. That they like to accuse Trump of acting as such, when he's simply just wanting to get his team in place. He wants to get people who are going to be loyal to the cause, who want to make a difference in our country, who want to change our country. Judge Rudolph Contreras echoed the same sentiment, warning that removing independent officials during legal challenges could destroy the very independence those agencies were built to protect. Now, Trump's position initially won the backing of a 3-judge appellate panel, which sided 2-1 in allowing the firings. But Ms. Wilcox and Ms. Harris requested a full court review, which reversed the earlier ruling and sided with them. Roberts' decision now pauses that reinstatement while the legal process plays out, and this could take some time. Wilcox and Harris aren't the only ones in this legal tug-of-war. Hampton Dellinger, another Democrat appointee, also sued after being fired from his position back in February. His case is pending in the D.C. District Court as well. So while the Trump administration is celebrating this latest court development, the bigger constitutional questions about the limits of presidential power are still very much up in the air. And we're probably going to see the nation's highest court settling that issue. Now, for the bad news, that was the good news. Trump got a temporary stay on that. He got some bad news from the courts yesterday, too. 2 federal judges in Texas and in New York temporarily blocked Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelan nationals, the latest in a high-profile legal saga. I mean, I thought we had this settled. I thought the Supreme Court had said, yes, Mr. President, you can use the Alien Enemies Act. These plaintiffs, they're 2 separate lawsuits, asked federal judges in Brownsville, Texas, and Orange County, New York, to grant a temporary restraining order blocking their removals under the 1798 wartime immigration law that was reviewed by the Supreme Court literally a couple of days ago. This judge, Fernando Rodriguez from Brownsville, Texas, granted a temporary restraining order filed on behalf of these 3 Venezuelan nationals. The order temporarily blocks their removal, as well as the removal of any other person that responders claim are subject to removal under the proclamation from the district's El Val Detention Center, according to the text of his ruling. Basically, a wide-sweeping ruling to protect people in that area. I think they've gotten the message that you can't have a district judge from New York, for example, issuing injunctions for something that's taking place in Texas. So now they're being a little more creative. They're being a little more precise, and they're getting judges in areas that are being that are affected. Judge Rodriguez is a Trump appointee, surprisingly. He sided with the plaintiffs' contention that allowing the law to be used for their deportations would likely cause immediate and irreparable injury to the removed individuals, whom he said would likely be unable to seek habeas relief. In addition, he said the substantial likelihood exists that the individual could not be returned to the United States if deported, and he's probably right there. But the Supreme Court, in their decision earlier this week, made it clear that these potential deportees had the right to be heard in front of a judge. That in itself was a bit of a setback, but I guess it's fair. Judge Rodriguez said he'll hear from both parties in court again this Friday, tomorrow, to consider whether to continue extending the 14-day emergency order. Now, in the New York case, it was filed in a Manhattan federal court. U.S. District Judge Alvin Hellerstein, he's a Clinton appointee. He sided with 2 Venezuelan nationals whose attorneys argued that they likely would have time to seek the habeas relief granted by the Supreme Court in its emergency ruling. Basically, that they needed time to try to get a court's assistance in blocking their deportation. Both clients, and others similar situated to them, are now all at imminent risk of removal by the Trump administration without proper notice, the lawyer said in the filing. Hellerstein's ruling, unlike that of the federal judge in Texas, stopped short of directly addressing whether the Alien Enemies Act is an appropriate legal basis for deporting the 2 individuals, though it temporarily blocks the law from being used to remove them. It's a stalling tactic. The updates follow the 5-4 Supreme Court ruling on Monday that lifted a lower court's restraining order allowing the Trump administration to temporarily resume the use of the Alien Enemies Act. This is a battle, and it's just the beginning. Again, I get back to a question I asked a minute ago. It'd be scary to know how much money has already been spent protecting people who are in our country who shouldn't be here anyway. I don't think there's any argument or any question that these people in question are here illegally. I don't think their attorneys are arguing that they should be here. But they're using all of these legal tactics to delay the deportation. And that's the whole idea of the Alien Enemies Act, of this wartime act, is to be able to get people who could potentially cause your country harm out quickly. No questions asked. If they can't show you legitimate paperwork where they should be here legally, send them home. In granting the temporary restraining order, Judge Rodriguez, again, he's the Trump appointee, agreed with the plaintiff's argument that maintaining the status quo is required to afford the parties the ability to develop a fuller record for the court to consider their request for a preliminary injunction and to be able to get some relief. He said to prevent the immediate and irreparable injury that may occur with the immediate removal of any Venezuelan alien subject to the proclamation, they should be able to have their day in court, basically. He said if the United States erroneously removed an individual to another country based on the proclamation, a substantial likelihood exists that the individual could not be returned to the U.S. And I get that. I understand that. But where does the common sense fact that they shouldn't be here to begin with ever play into this argument? Lawyers for the Trump administration have urged the court to vacate the lower court ruling, arguing in the Supreme Court filing that the lower court orders rebuff their immigration agenda, including their ability to protect the nation against foreign terrorist organizations and risk debilitating effects for delicate foreign negotiations. Basically, we have terrorists in our country. These people are in our country terrorizing our communities. Another case this past week of an illegal killing a young child in California. These people don't need to be in our country, and the faster we can get them out, the better. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. Always enjoy your text messages, your emails. You can always email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Of course, I like your messages on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. On the text line, Faye writes, this clown who thinks Trump voters are all racist needs to give us his bank statements so that we can see who fuels his fire. If he doesn't want to be in the U.S., planes go across the pond almost 24/7. Hop aboard. You're right, Faye. She's talking about, of course, the Princeton professor that I introduced you to yesterday. Fred writes about him, too. He says, this Princeton professor, nitwit, is as dumb as day is long. So are the two who listened to his racial hatred of America, who failed to point out all the many minorities who voted for Trump. Albert writes, good morning, Joey. I'm white, and I voted for Trump. I challenge Professor Eddie Glaude to find one person who can honestly say I'm racist. I think that he's racist. He is nothing more than a political activist. Well, look, he likes getting the headlines. That's how he was invited to be on, what was it, MSNBC or CNBC, one of those networks. Dan writes, for the guy that they sent to El Salvador, wherever in administrative era, why don't they just bring him back? and just figure out the paperwork and then admit there was a mistake like they did say, and then there shouldn't be any more questions about it. Dan, as my understanding, it's a little more complicated because once they get to this El Salvador prison, it's hard to get them out. And besides, I think he was sent by mistake or he's picked up by mistake at the time, but it's my understanding he still was here illegally. He still should not have been here. Thanks for your text messages. The White House will no longer respond to reporters. Now, this is a good one. I had to read this twice to make sure that I understood this and that it was what I thought it said. You know, all of these lefties, when you receive an email from them and they have these elaborate email signatures and they have all their pronouns in there. Well, the White House says that they will no longer respond to reporters who list their preferred gender pronouns in their email signatures because, quote, they ignore scientific realities. The Trump War Room account announced on X, it's official White House policy to ignore reporters' emails with pronouns in their signature. The official account then added a statement from the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. I almost said Corrine KJP. I'm glad she's out of there. Caroline Leavitt saying that she doesn't respond to journalists who use pronouns as it shows they ignore scientific realities and therefore ignore facts. Leavitt confirmed to the New York Times, as a matter of policy, we do not respond to reporters with pronouns in their bios. Now, some of these reporters, they'll sue the White House. Just wait. Next week, I'll be telling you where they filed a federal lawsuit against the White House to make the White House read their emails with their pronouns in them. The Department of Government Efficiency spokeswoman Katie Miller also replied to a New York Times reporter that she would not answer questions due to pronouns in a signature. Miller said this applies to all reporters who have pronouns in their signature. The use of pronouns in emails and social media biographies has been rampant in recent years as a way to show solidarity, I guess, to the transgender and non-binary people who may prefer to be addressed as they, them, or Z-zer. I never have understood pronouns. I never have understood what is Z-zer. Is Z-zer a male or a female? Or is it someone who doesn't want to be either? The Trump administration has a policy recognizing only two genders, male and female. Also, the administration said yesterday that it's appealing a court ruling that has ordered the White House to restore the Associated Press access to official presidential events. Now, remember I told you earlier this week that a appeals court judge had ordered the Trump administration to reinstate the credentials for the Associated Press. Now, you recall that Trump stripped their credentials, not allowing them in the press pool for any events because they failed to recognize that he had renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. The U.S. Attorney's Office said that it was filing an appeal with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia on behalf of the three senior White House officials named in the AP complaint. AP journalists and photographers have been barred and not allowed in the press office, not allowed on Air Force One, not allowed basically to enter any of these press events. On Tuesday, District Judge Trevor McFadden, who is a Trump appointee, surprisingly, said that the viewpoint-based denial of the AP's access was a violation of the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which guarantees freedom of speech and of the press. And I get the freedom of speech argument there, Judge, but I just don't get why you would think that anybody has the right to be in the press pool. That is a privilege that should be decided on the president, the person in office. Because if I wanted to go and be part of the press pool, they wouldn't allow me because there's not room. I mean, that as I've said many times in the past, that's a very small area where the press briefings are held. And that's why they literally have numbers on the seats, and you have assigned seats. And you have to be pre-approved to attend these press gatherings. The AP thinks that they're special, I guess. And look, if they want to be in the press briefings, all they have to do is acknowledge that the president renamed the Gulf of Mexico. It's now the Gulf of America. It's just that simple. But no, they want to stand up to the president. They want to defy him. An AP spokeswoman, Lauren Eston, welcomed the court order earlier this week, saying today's ruling affirms the fundamental right of the press and public to speak freely without government retaliation. This is a freedom guaranteed for all Americans in the U.S. Constitution. And again, I agree, freedom of speech is something that's guaranteed. But having a seat in the press pool is not a constitutional right. And here's the thing. In the Style Guide, which is a book that the AP prints, it's sort of considered the Bible for journalism. They note that the Gulf of Mexico has carried that name for more than 400 years, and the agency will refer to it by its original name while acknowledging the new name Trump has chosen. The AP said, as a global news agency that disseminates news around the world, the AP must ensure that place names and geography are easily recognizable to all audiences. They're 180-year-old. The AP is. That they've provided news to print, TV, and radio outlets across the U.S. and around the world for 180 years. And they should know better. This is going to be another one of those legal challenges that we're going to be watching. I speculated earlier whether or not the Trump White House would appeal this. And in fact, I think I probably said earlier in the week, they probably won't. They probably will spend their energy and money, our money, to battle some of these other ones. They'll just let the AP back in. But nope, they're not going to cave. They're going to try to stand up to the AP, as they should, I think, because I don't think the AP should be allowed back in until they acknowledge that President Trump renamed the Gulf of Mexico. It's just that simple. They're trying to make a point. Trump's also trying to make a point. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.